finally here. First, Stella Laitman wraps up the NFL season. Then, Joe Duffy will share his predictions of what's to come on Sunday night. And finally, we'll give our best bets of Super Bowl 58. All this and more coming up on College Pressbox.
Good evening and welcome to College Pressbox. I'm your host Justin Todd and he's Zach Davis. We have a great show for you this evening.
But first, a quick reminder before we get started that we are sponsored by Cap Metro, Austin's very own regional public transportation provider, connecting you to work, school, play, and more. Find your ride at capmetro.org.
All of us have spent the last few months patiently waiting for this moment. That's right. It's Super Bowl Sunday, and with it comes a very special edition of Pressbox. We have analysts and guests galore waiting in the wings to talk about the teams, players, and storylines that you'll see finally reach a conclusion in just a few short days. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back on College Pressbox.
Joining us at the table is our NFL analyst, Stella Laitman. Thanks for stopping by, Stella.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach. I'm looking forward to debriefing all the ups and downs of this hectic NFL season.
Well, we can go in so many different directions with all the storylines this season has seen. From Rodgers going down on his fourth snap of the year to Cleveland picking up Joe Flacco. In your opinion, which storyline this season has been the most impactful to the NFL?
Well, as you mentioned, Zach, it's hard to overlook Aaron Rodgers going down on his fourth snap of the year, practically crushing all hope for the Jets this season, as we saw with their final record of 7-10. It's fair to say the Jets' playoff hopes fell apart almost instantly. The Jets drafted their team on the assumption that Aaron Rodgers would be their quarterback throughout the season, but their whole drafting technique ended up being pointless given that he was out after their first game of the year. The Jets have also drafted Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson, both being first-round picks, yet their playoff drought persists and certainly doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. Without a starting quarterback, it's very hard for any team to succeed. You have a harder time making crucial game calls and an extremely difficult time orchestrating your team's offense. But that's not this team's only issue. With an indecisive head coach and a mediocre offensive coordinator, it's hard to keep the players on this team united and motivated for a whole season. Many players on the Jets offense spoke up about this issue and voiced that they felt Nathaniel Hackett was only there to help Rodgers succeed and failed to adjust after losing him, causing the team as a whole to practically fall apart. For now, we just have to hope Aaron Rodgers makes a full recovery and is ready to step in and hopefully fulfill the role people believe he's able to. At this point, the goal is no longer making the playoffs, it's survival. It's hard to not feel bad for the Jets fan base, especially given how high their hopes must have been going into this season.
Yeah, I don't think many fans could have seen the Jets going 7-10, going into the season, getting all their Monday Night Football games and those expectations. And on top of that, the other teams underperformed. The Chargers finished 5-12, and on the other side, the Lions went 12-5. What team surprised you the most this season in either underachieving or overachieving their expectations?
Well, Zach, it's hard to not mention the bright future for the Houston Texans. The Texans won just 3 games last season. This season, they finished 10-7 as division champions. That right there is proof that when you draft the right quarterback, the possibilities truly are endless. C.J. Stroud had an amazing playoff debut, leading Houston to a 45-14 win over the favored Cleveland Browns. Though he is just 22 years old, making him the youngest starting quarterback in the league, he has truly defied all odds. He has absolutely proven that he deserves this spot as Houston's starting quarterback, and he knows how to be a leader and drive his team towards success, which is something that did not come easily to Houston for a long time. After concluding the 2022 season with a 3-13 record, their preseason hopes were extremely low, and making the playoffs did not seem likely. Expected to maybe win 6 games in the 2023 season, it was clear the Texans needed drastic help on and off the field. I think DeMeco Ryans was the perfect candidate for the new head coach of the Texans. He is young and offered a fresh mindset to this team that was desperately needed after hiring David Cooley and Lovie Smith in back-to-back failing seasons. DeMeco not only played in the NFL, but he actually played on the Houston Texans. Talk about a good fit. If anyone knows how to lead a football team to success, it's him, and that was shown through the overwhelming support from the Texans fan base and the Texans' winning season.
Yeah, I mean, I love how you talked about DeMeco Ryans and the coaches he brought in. At the end of every season, coaches go, coaches stay. Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions, is staying in Detroit amidst rumors he is leaving for a head coaching job. Bill Belichick, arguably the best coach in NFL history, parted ways with the Patriots. Dan Quinn is leaving his Cowboys coordinator job but staying in division as the head coach of the Commanders. And the list just goes on. Anyway, in your opinion, Stella, which coaching hire surprised you the most, and what kind of success can we expect from them next season?
I'd say hiring a new head coach mid-season is pretty surprising. Seeing Antonio Pierce be hired in the midst of a difficult season following the firing of Josh McDaniels likely left Raiders fans worried and doubtful for the near future. Pierce, a 9-year NFL veteran player, stepped up to the plate, finishing the season 8-9 after McDaniels had only won 3 of his 8 games as head coach this season. Pierce led the Raiders to finish second in their division, right behind the Kansas City Chiefs. Pierce took over a team that would have had a very high draft pick and turned them into a playoff contending team that finished just on the outside looking in. With McDaniels, the Raiders lost to the Chargers 24-17, and just 5 weeks later, this same team annihilated the Chargers 63-21, the only difference being having Pierce as the head coach. This loss was so brutal for the Chargers that they needed to reevaluate if their own head coach was fit for the position. When talking about the Las Vegas Raiders, it is also super important to recognize the deep culture and diversity incorporated in this team. Sandra Morgan is currently the president of the Las Vegas Raiders and the first black woman to serve as an NFL team president. With Pierce recently hired as head coach, these two have came together to serve in 2 of the most important roles for an NFL team to function. With Antonio Pierce as head coach, I'd say the future is looking super bright for the Raiders right now, and this team will definitely be one to look out for in this upcoming season.
Watch out for that. Keeps playing on Sunday. Thanks for that, Stella. When we return, Joe Duffy joins us in dishing out his Super Bowl predictions. You will not want to miss it.
Welcome back to College Pressbox.
The 2023 NFL season has been quite the roller coaster, being the quote-unquote year of the backup, with some of the game's biggest stars taking an unexpected backseat to new aspiring talent. While there were some underwhelming seasons for hyped potential playoff teams like the Jaguars, there were also unexpected runs from squads like the youngest team in the league, the Green Bay Packers. However, the NFL playoffs ended up with 2 of the usual suspects in the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs. Here to inform us more on Super Bowl 58 in Vegas is our very own Joseph Duffy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Justin.
Of course, always glad to be here with you. The NFC champion 49ers have lived up to expectations after former Mr. Irrelevant pick Brock Purdy stunned the NFL world with his emergence in 2022. But how did San Francisco arrive in Vegas amidst the slow starts of the past 2 weeks?
Well, Justin, the Niners have dealt with a myriad of injuries all season long, and after a dominant 5-0 start, the Niners would drop 3 straight and will lose their all-pro safety in Talanoa Hufanga to a torn ACL. Now, while the Niners defense has surprisingly had their struggles on run defense, the Niners offense has been one of the pleasant constants due to their versatility. Finishing second in total offense and third in points per game, San Fran can attack you efficiently through the air and the ground. Brandon Ayuk, who has stepped up as number 1 target, finished with 1,342 yards and 7 TDs, while George Kittle, the tight end, who has taken a lighter receiving role the past few seasons, had another 1,000-yard season, while Deebo Samuel, who's battled some injuries in the past month, has been a solid safety gadget for the young, now very relevant Brock Purdy. The former Iowa State QB, who Texas fans are all too familiar with, has had quite the start to his career. And say what you want about Purdy, but he finished the season with 4,280 yards, 31 passing touchdowns, and finished first in QBR. But finally, this Niners offense wouldn't have its current identity without one Christian McCaffrey. The NFL's best running back would lead the league in rushing, but would also lead in total touchdowns for a running back, with an astounding 25, 11 of them being receiving. This Niners team as a whole has gone off to slow starts against the Packers and last week against the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship. But they're going to need to come out firing like we've seen them do in the past, because it's going to be tough to escape a slow start against the team they're going to face this Sunday.
Yeah, McCaffrey, not only
A beast on the field, a beast in my fantasy league, PPR monster.
For sure.
Of course, the Niners are looking to finally capture that long-awaited 6th Super Bowl title, their first since 1995, almost 30 years ago. However, the Kansas City Chiefs are also looking to stack upon an already impressive run, possibly becoming the first team to earn back-to-back titles since the 2004 and 2005 New England Patriots. How has this Kansas City arrived in its fourth Super Bowl in the last 5 years?
Well, Justin, the Kansas City Chiefs have had a head-scratching season, to say the least. The craziest revelation has been Steve Spagnuolo's defense, which was a top 3 unit all year long, giving up 17 points a game. In the Patrick Mahomes era, we've typically had to wait until the NFL playoffs to watch this defense finally click. But this defense actually seemed to never falter in all of 2023. And they'd once again dominate last week, only giving up 14 points against the presumptive MVP Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens on the road in the AFC Championship. On the flip side, the Chiefs' offense being underwhelming in 2023 was definitely not something any of us expected, to say the least. Mid-tier in total yards and points per game, this was the worst Chiefs' offense of the past 5 years by far. And after losing Tyreek Hill to Miami in 2022, the Chiefs have been shuffling in various receivers while relying on Travis Kelce as a number 1 option. But this season, the magic seemed to not have worked in the regular season with sloppy receiver play and play calling that we are not accustomed to seeing with Andy Reid. But when you have number 15, Patrick Lavon Mahomes II, what may look impossible can seemingly become a reality. And in the divisional round, the Chiefs' offense finally, it looked familiar to what we've known them to be in the past, thrashing an underrated Dolphins defense. Then the questions became, how could Mahomes look on the road, being that he's lived at Arrowhead his entire playoff career? He hasn't had a single road game until this season. And then he would put the Bills Mafia in tears with a nail-biting 27-24 win in Orchard Park. And then in front of a raucous Baltimore crowd, a total team effort would be the story for another AFC championship for KC with a 17-14 win. As you can see, that nice punch out the goal line for a clutch touchback in the very late stages of the game. And I've seen this story many times before with some of the great teams in the past. Great quarterbacks, they like to find a way to rally their troops when it matters the most. And we've seen that just in the 2023 season for Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs.
I mean, the Chiefs were an incredible and horrifying team to watch this season.
Up and down.
So I'm very interested to see how they put a cap on a pretty good year. And finally, what is your prediction for an underrated performer who might show up big in this game, and who will be your Super Bowl champion?
Yeah, this is a tricky question. I have a very interesting answer for those questions, and I think it's a performer that is very overlooked, but for a very good reason, because he has like the Avengers as his teammates on his offense, and that would be the former Tennessee Volunteer, Jawan Jennings. You may know him in the past for his clutch Hail Mary in a college football season a few years ago. But it may sound crazy and his stats aren't going to wow you, but he's had clutch catches the past 2 weeks against Green Bay and Detroit. Unnecessary downs to move the chains, while the Niners had their backs against the wall, as you saw that one against the Packers right there to move the chains. Then this one right here, which was very clutch against Detroit, as they were down 17 points, and they would not look back after that clutch catch right there. And I'm not saying that he's going to put all-time Super Bowl numbers, but I firmly believe that he'll be a reliable target for Brock Purdy on crucial downs and just may get a late touchdown for San Francisco. I'm just going to throw that out there. It could happen. This is also credit to an impressive KC defense, whose secondary has been very good all year and will demand that other targets step up besides Ayuk, Debo, Kittle, and CMC. Now, with that being said, I do believe that in all of San Francisco's glory, KC will be too much to handle. To reiterate, you can play comeback against other franchises, but generational quarterbacks simply will not let that happen, especially on the biggest stage like the Super Bowl. I think the run game of Kansas City, led by Isaiah Pacheco, will run over this weak Niners run D, while Patrick Mahomes will have his way with this Niners secondary, with the solid Chiefs offensive line protecting him the whole way. And amidst all of the quote-unquote distractions, I believe that Travis Kelce's role will once again be important, having at least 2 touchdowns in Vegas to cement himself as the greatest tight end of all time. Yes, I said that. With all of that, the Chiefs in the Mahomes era will earn their 3rd ring, becoming the newest dynasty of the National Football League.
Thank you so much for that,
Joe. When we come back to College Pressbox, Perla Paredes will break down the popular Super Bowl bets that are catching eyes in Cincy. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back into College Pressbox. Joining us now is Perla Paredes to discuss her best bets for Super Bowl 58. Appreciate you being here, Perla.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So as we all know, this Super Bowl is being played in Las Vegas this year, home of the gamble. So we thought we should include some of what I think are the best bets for the weekend. Starting off with Christian McCaffrey, anytime rushing TD. There isn't much needed to be said when talking about this guy, and touchdowns or any offensive stat for that matter. He is the best running back in the league, who ended a 17-game scoring streak just this season and immediately began scoring in the next game. He is supported by one of the best offensive lines in the league and is the very least much better than the Chiefs' defensive line is prepared for, considering they've been one of the worst against the NFL. Yes, if San Francisco does what Baltimore, for some very odd reason, didn't do, I think the run game will and should be a huge part of the Niners' offense, especially considering the Chiefs' secondary and how good they have been. All of this in mind, and CMC anytime TD is a lock. And to piggyback off this, I also feel really good about taking the over 92.5 rushing yards from McCaffrey, because I believe they're going to lean heavily on this guy. My next pick is Travis Kelce, also anytime rushing or receiving TD. I think we can all agree that he was nowhere to be found in the second half of this season, but it's Travis Kelce, now the all-time leader in postseason receptions and second in TDs with 19, second to only Jerry Rice with 22. He has a full 8 more games played. Come playoff time, he and Patrick Mahomes are undeniable. The Niners defense is good, and if there's going to be any scoring going on by the Chiefs, Mahomes is going to be going to the guy he trusts the most. Next is Isaiah Pacheco, higher than 70.5 rushing yards. The Niners have been really good against the run all regular season. They've been third in best yards allowed per game in the NFL during that span. However, in their 2 playoff games, they've allowed 160 rushing yards per game and averaged almost 6 yards per carry. This bet is really about how much you believe the Niners will bounce back and come through this Sunday. And personally, I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Chiefs in this fashion. Or more so, Pacheco. I think both teams are going to rely on the run game, and for the Chiefs, that's going to be Pacheco, who has gotten 70 yards or more in his last 3 games. Next, I got Brandon Ayuk. Lower than 4.5 receptions, with the Chiefs secondary being good. If Brock Purdy is going to be throwing to anybody, it's going to be Deebo Samuel. Finally, to top it all off, the dude has gotten 3 catches in each of his last 3 games. Now, of course, this isn't a solid thing to go by, but that's why I also bring everything else. This is just the cherry on top. In the playoffs, things change, and you find yourself always coming back to the guy you trust most, which for Purdy and the Niners is going to be Deebo. My next pick is Brock Purdy, lower than 473.5 passing yards, and Patrick Mahomes, lower than 261.5 passing yards. The man of the hour. Both quarterbacks, I think, are going to lower their lines, and I sound like a broken record by now, but when you know, you know. They're going to rely on the running game more so than passing, and no, it's not going to completely go away when you have Patrick Mahomes and Brock Purdy as your quarterbacks, but their lines are good for the unders. In this scenario, finally, in the bet that will take off the field, Super Bowl viewership over 112 million, the average. The average viewership for the past 5 years has been 112 million, and this year it can go either way. These teams have a lot of people who dislike them, both for beating their teams in the playoffs this year or in the past. When you bring in the fact that both America's teams in Detroit and Baltimore, nobody outside of the fan bases wants either one to win. But now, on the other end, people love football, and no matter what personal beliefs about Mahomes, last week's win has without a doubt set him on a path to being in a serious conversation if he's the greatest of all time. And to even be in the same conversation as the known greatest of all time, Tom Brady, is an accomplishment. I think people will be interested in how that's going to play out, and that's why I'm picking over. We also can't forget about the Swifties that came in this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, Super Bowl, the Super Bowl is for the gambling man. What else are you gonna do except bet? I saw that Taylor Swift is plus 225 to be proposed to after the Super Bowl. So, anyway, thank you for that, Perla. When we return, we will recap this past week in Longhorn sports. We'll be right back. Now let's take a quick look back at this past week in Longhorn sports. Texas basketball is showing signs of life as Max Asmus has 21 points as the Longhorns took down number 25 TCU in Fort Worth.
In women's hoops, number 12 Texas got their revenge against second-ranked Kansas State in the Moody Center, winning 61-54.
And finally, number 16 Longhorn baseball took down their Texas X's in their annual alumni game 7-4, thanks to a 5-run rally in the bottom of the 6th inning. And now looking ahead into this week in Longhorn sports on Thursday, the men's basketball team is hosting Iowa State at 7 p.m. Friday, softball team traveling to UCLA. That'll be at 8 p.m. on ESPN. And Saturday, men's basketball takes on West Virginia at 2 p.m. Women's basketball is at TCU at 4 p.m.
And that'll do it for this week's episode of College Pressbox. Thank you to everybody for tuning in, and thank you to everyone in our back room, including our executive producer, Jason Conander. Don't forget to tune into our other shows this week, like College Crossfire on Wednesday at 9 and 1-0 Sports on Friday at 10. That's it for me. I'm Justin Todd,
And he's Zach Davis, and we're from TSTV Sports. Have a great night, y'all.